and members of the Board of Adjustment for allowing me to speak. And thank you, Nick and Tom, for working with myself and the owner and the sign company, Summit West Signs of Mesa, Arizona, on this project. It's been a road to this point, a long road to this point, and we're eager to move on. I just wanted to point out, and to answer your question, Chairman and members of the Board of Adjustment, the McDonald's site is not part of the shopping center, so we'll exclude that out of the equation. But to answer your question, yes, the current freestanding sign, there is one on Thornydale, and there's another one on Linda Vista. Those will be removed prior to the installation of the new freestanding signs for the shopping center. The other points that I wanted to get across is, well, number one, that the staff report kind of touches upon all of the encumbrances and unique circumstances that warrant the request by the owner to allow taller and larger signs. Most notably, the owner does not have any control over the width, the travel lanes of Thornydale and Linda Vista. Right now, the travel lane on Thornydale is averaging between 35 to 40 feet to where the sign is proposed. That is a significant setback that we feel needs to require a taller, larger sign. The others on Linda Vista, between 65 to 70 feet of setback that exists between the travel lanes to where the signs are proposed. That significant setback warrants a larger, taller sign. With this, the other addition is the construction of a new Veterans Affairs clinic that is currently under construction on the west end of the shopping center. We feel that with that construction of a medical clinic, that these new signs will assist drivers, especially those with disabilities, to have adequate wayfinding and safety measures to pull into the shopping center, whether it's from the two driveways off of Thornydale or whether you make that right turn into Linda Vista and see the other signs at the two other driveways in order to give you the enough reaction time to turn into the shopping center. The other item to note that the signs have been designed to match the architecture of the shopping center. We understand that Thornydale is a scenic route, and therefore the signs proposed are compliant with dark sky guidelines. All of the tenant panels are opaque, and they have been proposed to be painted a color that matches the brown and tan of the building. All of the routed copy of the shopping center name and tenant panels will only illuminate at night, not the entire panel. And the base of the monument sign will also match the architecture. And we feel that this does not provide any safety issues, emit any odors, sound, or vibration that will cause any harm or hardship to any nearby residences, which there are none. Across the street, there is a high school, but across the street to the east, there is a vacant lot, and the nearest residences are actually to the north of the shopping center, away from view from the signs, and to the west of the shopping center. So all of these unique circumstances that apply to this site, including large setbacks, will warrant this request to increase the size, the height, and allow the sign to be placed at the property line of the center, which still has a large setback, which is why the signs need to be taller and larger for adequate safety visibility. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions from the board.
This is the chairman, Mr. Wildblood. One question. I'm very familiar with this property because I live not too far away from it, and I'm also very interested in the new VA facility that is there, being that I'm a VA person. The signs that you're going to have on Thornydale, both by the bank and the one to the north, there's a fair amount of vegetation that is going to have to probably be removed there. Is that in your plan?
Chairman and members of the Board of Adjustment, the signs are actually proposed in a way that the owner will try not to remove any native vegetation. There could be instances that the vegetation would be trimmed, especially the trees. Weeds and low-lying vegetation that are not native would be pulled. But the sign locations, the ones on Thornydale and Linda Vista, were proposed in a way to be not affecting any native plants during construction and after, including any future maintenance that would require landscapers to come in and do landscape maintenance on the vegetation, and two, not be blocked by any utility lines or utility boxes along both roads.
Well, on the Linda Vista side, the one sign location has got a fire hydrant and some type of a utility box approximately right where that sign is going to be, but I assume that you've figured that one out already.
Chairman and members of the board, that is correct. The sign that is on the eastern driveway on Linda Vista has been placed in a way where it is set back an adequate distance from both the fire hydrant and the backflow preventer that is to the south of that, which are actually the fire hydrant and the backflow preventer that you see in either images or Google Street View. Those are actually on the right-of-way side of the property. The sign is going to be behind on the private property side.
Very good. Are there any other questions of the board members of the applicant? That being said, is there anybody on the line at this time to speak in favor of this? That being said, nobody spoke up. Is there anybody on the line at this point in time to speak against this variance? Since nobody's there to say that, I would like a motion to close the public hearing.
This is Bruce Call. I move to close the public hearing.
It's been moved to close by Mr. Call. Mr. Brass, are you going to second the motion, please?
I am.
It's been moved and seconded. Take a vote. Mr. Secretary, would you give a roll call vote to close the public hearing?
Sure. Mr. Green?
Approve closing the hearing.
Mr. Call?
Approve.
Mr. Brass?
Approved.
Chair Wildblood?
Approved.
Mr. Chair, the hearing's been closed.
Public hearing has been closed. Is there any discussion by the members on this case? All right. I, as chairman, have one big question, and that has to do with the size or the height of these monuments. It seems to me that we might, based upon some of the other things that we have done in the past, and also looking forward as to some of the changes that are being made in the county codes. And maybe, Tom, you can enlighten us on some of those changes that are going forward. But I have a lot of concern. Are you still there?
Yes, we are. You cut out for a minute there.
I had somebody calling me in. My concern is the height of these. At 18 feet, that's very, very strong in size. And it seems to me it would be relatively easy at this point to take 2 feet off that base and lower this down to about 16 feet. Tom, do you have any comments about that?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I always have comments when you want them. So, one of the things I would say is we do get into the discussion about height on a regular basis. And, we see the benefits in providing the increased height as a way of traffic visibility. I'm not sure we have an opinion between 16 feet and 18 feet. When we looked at this and worked with Andrew and his team, we really looked at it from a holistic approach of whether or not those signs are aesthetic, whether or not they integrate well into the environment. And, with future plans to eventually widen Thornydale, it's going to be a high-speed, high-traffic road. We ended up siding on the side of being okay with the additional height. We always understand the other side are concerns with the amount of it. And with the sign code effort that we went through over the last couple of years, which the board has participated in, we want to get those signs as close to the front property line as we can to provide the maximum amount of visibility. And so I can understand, the discussion of the height, but the reason we supported it is because overall, it integrates well into the complex. It's a large commercial complex, and we see Thornydale as a major thoroughfare and want to provide the maximum amount of visibility for the tenants in there.
My comment about it is the current signs are only about 9 feet high. And when you look at the current signs, they're almost invisible. And I say that from a standpoint because I support the aspect of being able to generate some recognition to this facility because it's gone through an iteration over the course of years. There used to be a grocery store there. They went belly up. Then it became a Safeway. Safeway pulled out. Now it's a trampoline place. And so, business changes, and I understand that. This is a unique set of property that's there that, unlike some of our other areas in more highly parts of town, that I think a bigger sign is warranted versus some of the other signs that we've looked at in the past, height-wise, where we've had to make some modifications on it. So that was my only concern about the 18-foot size of it. And are we opening ourselves up in the future on something that might come up in another area? Are we opening ourselves up to something that we can't go back on?
Mr. Chair, if you're looking for, maybe my, response is that the one thing that's unique and beneficial for the Board of Adjustment is that when they make approvals or denials, they are not precedent setting and they are not applied uniformly across all cases. So we see signage, we see buildings that the boards approve and that the boards deny similar or slightly different requests, and that's acceptable. And so, and I understand the height comment, and it's something that Nick and I vetted, feverishly and for a long time before coming to our recommendation, and understand completely. But I would tell the board that any action they make today is not precedent setting for someone who comes in next month or next year, for an approval on a request.
Well, I agree with you in the past, and I know that Mr. Green is brand new to this, so he might have some questions too. But this is a unique set of property in a unique location, and so that's what I wanted to just verify, that we're not going to be setting any type of precedent with this compared to future endeavors relative to signage in the rest of the board's area.
Mr. Chair, board members, that's definitely correct. And Mr. Wildblood is a long, as a long-serving member, we see lots of sign variances in District 1. It's what this board does more than anything. And so, we as Nick and I, when we present recommendations, we're always trying to, evaluate and try to make a thoughtful recommendation, knowing the amount of requests that this board sees and where to say yes and where we think it's appropriate to make changes. And we'll continue to do that, throughout the process and throughout the cases.
All right, at that point in time, are there any other discussion points by the board members?
Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I too was struck by the 18-foot request. We've had a lot. 18 is an interesting number. It's divisible by 2, 3, 4, and 6, and 9. But that didn't seem to make sense. I think this might be a good place to set a precedent. And my only looking at it, and I live pretty close to it also, is I was thinking 15 feet would be my recommendation. And I'd make a point to Tom that it's already a high-density, high-speed artery. And visibility matters, safety matters, but I get a funny feeling that the sign companies all talk to one another on what they want. So I would be in support of Mr. Wildblood's observation, but I'd even go a foot further. That is all.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Mr. Cole, you had a comment also.
Yeah, the 16 versus 18 feet is not a big deal for me one way or the other. What seems to me to be a concern is something that we would likely hear from the McDonald's there on the corner. On Thornydale, the southernmost new sign proposed will block very distinctly the sign that is evidently the freestanding sign for McDonald's, right at the point where the McDonald's, a vehicle would most likely see it in time to make that turn. It seems to me like that should require some specific approval or at least coordination with McDonald's, because I think they're going to be livid about that.
Mr. Chairman? Do you have any comments about that?
Additionally, because that's actually kind of a secondary access off of Thornydale for it. Looks like the main entrance gets you right into the main parking lot. There's further north. You have the two there along, along Linda Vista. And so that second one that's squeezing in between the two, right after the one building and right before the McDonald's, and right there where it's going to cover that McDonald's sign, I think there's going to be an issue. And I'd like to not have we create a condition that's going to be an unfair to the neighbor.
Mike, Tom, and Nick, I can add in my comments if you can open up the. This is Andrew. If you can open up, and I can answer the chair and board's questions regarding the McDonald's sign.
Aaron, if you would, please answer that question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I able
Go ahead,
to
Andrew.
Okay, this is Andrew Chi again, representative for Glenwood. in regards to the sign that's proposed on the southern driveway on Thornydale, which is shared with the McDonald's parcel, the McDonald's sign is currently about 19 feet from the property line, and it is in fact set back, and it's about 45 feet from the travel lanes. The position of the proposed freestanding sign that is on the north side of the driveway, it is only 5 feet set back from the driveway curb. We are open to maneuvering the sign and placing it a little bit north. There's a significant amount of space between the driveway and to the north, and just enough width between the landscape wall and the property line to fit the sign anywhere along the frontage in front of that existing pad building, so that as drivers drive southbound on Thornydale, they will see the sign and make that turn, and that sign, because it's been moved further north, will not blockade the McDonald's sign. And McDonald's can come in at a later date in the future to request their own variance if needed, if they would like to move their sign closer, because it is in fact set back 19 feet from the property line, and currently the code requires that down to 10. If we do move the sign, the proposed sign on the southern driveway for our property further north, we will also try to make sure that we still have that sign set back from the other proposed sign on the north driveway, so that there is not an appearance of sign clutter as you drive southbound on Thornydale when you first see the sign on the north driveway, and then you see the sign on the side next to the southern driveway. And I can answer any additional questions for the chair or the board to help you make a decision.
This is the chairman, Mr. Wildblood. Being familiar with that area, there is a huge sign for McDonald's, and it's pretty. They've taken that to the maximum. So, Mr. Cole, I don't think it's going to be a problem, but if it is in the future, I believe that's probably going to be McDonald's problem for a variance.
Well, I see that, but that's part of the reason that I posed the question is, as the owner has mentioned, that we don't want to have a sign clustering there, a big sign for McDonald's, and right across the driveway another big sign that happens to be, even though it's close to it's right to the property line, not the same setback. It's precisely because of the angular view when you're driving up towards that McDonald's that big sign, the new big sign proposed, would potentially block the McDonald's big sign for a substantial area right at the critical turning area. And then you see two big signs together. The other signs, I don't have any problem with at all. That one, I think I have a problem with.
Okay, the south sign, currently there's nothing there except a big tree, which probably is more of a hindrance towards McDonald's sign than the sign would be, but that's just my interpretation of the area. Are there any other questions that people would have at this point in time from the board members? Mr. Green, do you have any?
I have comments, which are more appropriate to the closed session. Are you still open?
Yes, we're closed at this point in time. That was just a brief interruption for him to come in.
Okay. So I am new, and we will need to learn to work together on this. So I do have a few comments. One is that I'm particularly pleased to see that the group went above and beyond in terms of dark sky protection, because they aren't obligated in any way to have white lettering on opaque background, but that's what they chose. And so that really does help a great deal. That being said, my attitude toward county codes is that they were devised by a long, painful consensus building process in order to represent the compromises of a lot of different stakeholders. And so I therefore expect a very high threshold to be able to grant a variance. And I didn't find this request compelling in any way because it says, number 11, if the variance is from a sign or advertising structure area limitation, no reasonable use of the property can be made unless the variance is granted. And number 12, if the variance is from a height limitation, no reasonable use of the property can be made unless the variance is granted. And I don't think this request satisfies either of those conditions. So I hope that, however, my strength of feeling varies a bit. As you talked, they requested 3 different variances, namely setback, height, and sign size. And so I hope that when we are considering a response, we consider those 3 separately, and that I have no opinion about setbacks. I think we might consider on sign size the possibility, even though this kind of sign isn't thought of in dark sky protection allowance for the sign code, we could decide that it was eligible for that and give a 25% increase over the 50 square feet. And I am not a big fan of height variances at all. So you've gotten a different viewpoint from me.
Well, your point is well taken, and it's interesting that Mr. Call is being an architect and engineer, and Mr. Brass is heavily involved with astronomy, so he knows all about the dark sky. And me, I'm just kind of another guy in the neighborhood, I guess. But no, your point is well taken, and each of the things that we look at have individual characteristics. All properties have individual characteristics. For instance, the last one that we did is a very unusual size lot in a very unusual area, and you have to take in these considerations, and that's one of the things that the staff does. They look at all points, and as Tom had mentioned, this board looks heavily at a lot of signage in a lot of different areas. And that's why I brought up the aspect about 18 feet high. It's not uncanny or it's not out of proportion to what this area and this development looks like. And the signs are not, in my judgment, are not out of place. But that's only mine. So when I come to voting, I'll vote my way that I think. So, are there any other discussions by board members at this point in time? At that point in time, I would ask for a motion to either approve or deny this motion, and someone to second that motion. All right, this is Mr. Wildblood. I move to approve. Gotta get the right number. I move to approve P21VA00007, Mountain View Equities, LLC, North Thornydale Road, as presented and revised as of April 15th. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Wildblood, would you be willing to accept an amendment to your motion to suggest that the new sign be moved north enough to not obscure the existing McDonald's sign?
If you would like to move and make that amendment, go ahead and do it.
I would move to amend your motion to include a statement that the sign, that the owner coordinate with the McDonald's people and move the new sign enough north so as not to cause a obscuring or covering of the existing sign.
Would you make that a motion?
It's an amendment to your motion.
Why don't I pull my motion out and you redo everything? And then
okay,
we'll...
I move that PV or P21VA0007 Mountain View Equities LLC and